dating advice, relationship advice. Perhaps there's a scenario you're kind of living through and you want us to weigh in on that. Maybe you want us to bring up a topic. Anything is fair game here. All you have to do is send that email. You can also text us and reach out on social media as well. Brock is the dating expert, has helped numerous people get married, have found the one, and everything else. So you've heard a little bit of everything at this point.
At this point, I certainly have. Yeah, I certainly have.
So this shouldn't be too hard. Let's help out Brittany here, and we'll jump right in.
Sounds good. Let's go.
She says, "Hey, Brock, for the last 6 months, I've been dating this amazing guy, and things are getting pretty serious. We're starting to talk about the future, and the topic of moving in together has come up. It's exciting, but I'm also a bit anxious about how to approach this. How can we make sure that we're both on the same page about moving in together? And are there any common pitfalls that we should avoid? We're thinking of doing this after the new year. I want to make sure this next step in our relationship goes smoothly and isn't too fast." She said, "Thanks." And again, that was sent in by Brittany. Let's get your gut reaction. Then we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back for you to sink your teeth into it even more.
All right. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for writing this in. I love this question. This is probably one of the most common questions that I receive because let's be completely honest, when a relationship is going pretty well for several months or maybe even up to a year, like you start thinking about cohabitation. It's the next step to the relationship. My knee-jerk reaction, and anybody listening, I want to make this very, very clear. I love this part of the relationship. I think it's one of the most exciting. It's one of the most memorable. However, I do want to caution, do not do this out of convenience. Do not do this because bills will be cheaper. Do not do this because you can split rents. That is not a reason that I think is good enough for you to make that step with somebody. Make sure that the reasons that you're doing this are because it is the appropriate step for the phase of your relationship, not out of convenience. Real quick, the thing that I think you need to make sure that when you're about to make this step is that there's going to be a step after this. You have to be already talking about 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. It doesn't need to be, hey, this is the next step that we're taking and we don't really have a plan afterwards. Make sure that this is a part of a grander plan. One of the things that I want to make sure that you're doing, and I'm going to give you kind of a list here of a couple things to make sure that are discussed and handled before you make this beautiful and my most favorite step of the relationship. First thing is, how are you going to handle the bills? Maybe he's taking care of the rent and you're paying groceries or things like that. You need to understand what the financial responsibilities are going to be. The last thing you want is to start your cohabitation relationship off on the wrong foot because you haven't discussed who's responsible for what when you actually do move in. Next thing is there needs to be a relationship budget. Now, what I mean by this is a lot of times when people move in, they tend to get a little bit comfortable. And by comfortable, I mean, I see you all the time. Do we really need to go on a date? Do we really need to keep doing the courting and keep doing the date night? Yes, you do. You need to make sure that you are putting not just money aside, but time aside, the budget of time as well. Make sure that you continue the dating process. Even once you get married, for anybody that does get to the marriage stage, make sure you are putting a budget aside to continue dating. The next thing, you need to understand how you're going to handle your conflict. And this really comes like what people experience whenever they're living together is conflict later in the day, like later in the evening. What are your sleeping habits going to be? Is one of you going to sleep on the couch? Are you going to sit up all night and talk about it until, you resolve it? Like, what is that going to be? Because that, in my opinion, is one of the most crucial aspects to determining whether or not a relationship is actually going to last is if you are both on the same page about what your conflict resolution schedule is going to be. If you guys get into an argument, do you need a little bit of time? Have you communicated that? You need to know what your communication, what your conflict style is. So make sure you are both on the same page about that. Next thing is going to be about personal space. When you move in, personal space might be something hard to find, but you have to be very intentional about if you have an argument or if you've just come back from work, you need a little bit of time to yourself. What does that look like? What does the space that you need look like? Are there parts of the home or the apartment that are off limits to your partner? I have an office and I don't really like my wife to go in there. She'll go in there sometimes just to kind of pester me. I love her to death, but she knows that my office is my space and she has her own space and we do our very best to respect that is our space. It's very important that you have that, because when you are meshing your life together in a cohabitation dynamic, you still need to have a spot that's just yours. I think that's incredibly healthy. Other thing that this sounds so obvious, but you need to also understand who's responsible for what chores. Have this conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Don't wait till you're living it and you're not having these chats and a little bit of animosity builds up and you don't know how to communicate it. Make sure you guys are on the same page about that. And like I said earlier, make sure you have asked, where is this step taking us? Make sure that you moving in together is part of a larger process, a larger plan for your life. That is not just, hey, let's move in together and see what happens. I'm not a really big fan of that, like, let's test drive this relationship. That's not how I look at this. I think that when you move in together, before marriage, before engagement, that those things need to have kind of already been discussed, that you're already on that trajectory, if that's the trajectory that you want. But make sure you guys have a larger plan than just moving in together. And that, Brittany, is my advice. Take that before you move in. Everybody else that's about to renew your lease, make sure you're not just moving in because it's convenient. Make sure you have these things on lock.
Yeah, and it seems like even though some of those conversations seem pretty easy, if you're doing it under the pressure or already upset about it or whatever, they can amplify. So might as well nip it in the bud, get it done right before you move in, and then you at least know, even if you have to write it down, have a chore list, whatever the case may be. I know that's what Savannah and I have recently moved in together, and actually was right in the beginning of summer. And that was really one of the things, was that open communication. I've learned a lot from you, Brock, being able to have these conversations. But that was kind of the deal. It was like, okay, so who's responsible for what and how's this going to be the deal? And it was so much easier to do it when there is no pressure and nobody's angry about the dishes. You don't have to worry about the dishes when they're not there. But then all of a sudden those dishes start building up. And then, well, am I doing them or are you doing them?
Right.
Who should be doing, and so on and so forth.
Funny thing about the dishes thing is, in my relationship, I don't do almost any of the dishes. I love my wife. She does such a good job. She's such a good homemaker. However, she says, don't put any of the dishes on the left side of the sink. You got it. You got it. I will do that. And those are like the little things that you find out along the way as you're living together. And I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of that phase. I look forward to other people experiencing that part of their relationship.
Yeah, I think it's all sound advice. Good things right there too. And real quick too, the escape or being able to have your own space is absolutely huge. Mm-hmm. Living in previous relationships I've had or whatever, if you do not have your little escape, even if it is a corner in the office, whatever the case may be, it is nice because you kind of need that once in a while, especially if you're somebody that just kind of like gets lost in your own thought or just need to work your own issues out. That's highly recommended.
100%.
Highly recommended. There you go, Brittany. Hopefully that helped you out. Thank you so much for writing in. You out there listening, if you have a question that you would like us to tackle, make sure you write in. Again, that's Gino, Gino, at WDODradio.com. You can also go to BrockOlsen.com and get details on everything that Brock offers from matchmaking and so much more. And, of course, follow the podcast and everything else that Brock is up to. So, again, that's BrockOlsen.com. We'll talk to you next week, Brock. Thanks so much.
All right, sounds good, Gino. Thank you.